The Windtree Press Author Interviews, presented by Jane Killick.
Today we're talking to Judith Ashley, writer of the Sacred Women's Circle series of romance novels. Judith, welcome to the Windtree Press Author Interviews.
Good morning, Jane. I'm so glad to be here. I'm a little nervous. I've not done this type of a recording before.
And also you have a little bit of a throat thing going on today.
I do, yes. Of course it would be the day I'm doing this. I would have my low, throaty, sexy voice.
I want to find out a lot more about you as a writer and about your books. But first, the obvious question, seeing as your series is called the Sacred Women's Circle. What is a Sacred Women's Circle?
That's really an excellent question. The Sacred Women's Circle is obviously a circle of women. They can be varying sizes. The one I currently belong to there's 4 of us. And we have created our own spiritual practice based on earth-based religions and Christianity, Buddhism, goddess worship, Celtic, just a wide variety of practices that we have experienced as we've traveled and read and met with other people. So a Sacred Women's Circle can actually be any group of women that come together, and they may have a common spiritual practice that they all agree to, or they could be like my circle and the women in the book who create their own.
Well, writing isn't something that you've always done, which is quite interesting because some writers, grew up writing stories, but you came relatively late. And I believe the inspiration was a very traumatic time for both you and your family. Tell me about that.
In 1997, my father was diagnosed with lung cancer. He was 81 years old, or almost 81. He had been in the hospital twice in his entire life, other than when he came to see my mom when my brothers and I were born. So for him to be so sick, and he died 9 months after he was diagnosed, it was a very traumatic time for the family, not only because of his illness and his pending death, but because my mother became very, very ill at the same time. And I know the hospice nurses and I wondered if she was going to survive. That's when I turned to reading romance. I just needed to have a balance in my life.
The first book you picked up, I believe, a romance novel, was Nora Roberts. So you started right at the top, really.
I did, and I wanted to be just like her. I wanted to be New York Times best-selling author, making millions of dollars. I was so naive, Jane. When I was reading her books, I thought she made $1 profit on every book. And so she had like millions of dollars or millions of books in print. And I was just like, oh, she must be, $4 million, 12 million, The reality is she was probably, when she was first with Harlequin, I don't know that she even made 10 cents a book.
But it's not about the money for you and for most writers, because most writers don't get paid a lot of money. It's about the writing and the joy of the writing.
I would love to have more of an income from my writing than I currently have, and I'm working towards that. But if there was no money at all coming in, I would write because it brings me joy. I sit down to write, and these characters appear in my head. I can hear them talking, and I just feel like I'm sitting at the computer, putting out on, into the universe what these people are saying and doing in my head. It's very neat. It's like it is for me a spiritual experience because I know these women so well now. We've been together a long time.
Well, you say that spirituality is very important to you, and I believe the women in the Sacred Women's Circle fiction, they came to you in dreams. Tell me something about that.
I probably could count on two hands the number of dreams I remembered in my entire life, and I was in my 60s when I started writing. So for me to have days on end, weeks on end, where I was remembering these dreams, plus having visions during the day, the scariest one really was driving down the freeway and seeing from book 2, Elizabeth, the lady in the sacred grove popped up on the hood of my car. Now, there's a part of me that knows that wasn't real, but it's I just never knew when they would appear, and so they were very, very vivid, very, very real to me. Not so real that I needed medication or hospitalization, but they're very. I think many writers will say that their characters become real people to them. And that would be the case with these 7 women.
And all the women in the women's circle, which feature in all of these books, they help each other. It's a really community feel and everybody helping each other rather than having a conflict within the circle.
Yes, one of the reasons that I decided to publish these books instead of continuing to look for a publisher is the feedback I was getting was I needed more conflict. Lily and the other women in the circle needed to have arguments and fights. They needed to have falling outs. And that is not what a Sacred Women's Circle is. The Sacred Women's Circle is a haven where you can go. These are people that know you, that you trust, that trust you, and you help each other deal with life's challenges. It's not a place for conflict.
And you've got 7 books in this series. That sounds quite ambitious. Has it been hard to keep going and start the next one?
Actually, I'm just finishing the edits and final polish on Ashley, which will be out in December 2014, and I already have Hunter, who is the heroine of book 5. She's starting to pop up in dreams, and I hear her nattering in my ear from time to time. So, and that's how all of these books have come, is that as I'm finishing one up, the next person sort of pops up and says, "Hey, I'm here, I'm ready, hurry up, I want my story told next."
It's so great to hear a writer excited about the next book in their series, because so many people, they start a series and they get to the middle of it and they find it a bit of a struggle to keep going. But it's great to hear that you're still enjoying it.
I feel in many ways it's a calling, it's a spiritual calling to tell these women's stories in such a way that they inspire women who are going through similar circumstances. Lily has an issue of trusting Jackson. Elizabeth in book 2 doesn't know how to maintain her connection in the circle that's in Fremont, Oregon, and have a life with Michael, her soulmate, who's in Ireland. Diana is divorcing her abusive husband, and she turns to the tarot to find her way through. And in addition, they're talking to each other. They're relying on each other to help them through these tough times.
Well, I know that people listening to this will want to know more about the Sacred Women's Circle's stories. So can you tell us your website address where people can find out more?
Yes, you can find out more about the Sacred Women's Circle at Judith Ashley Romance, all one word, .com.
Well, Judith Ashley, it's been a real pleasure to speak to you today. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Jane. This has been easier than I thought it might be.
This has been a Windtree Press podcast. For more information, visit windtreepress.com.